Mrs. Carter, you co-signed, the manager said, sliding the paper across the polished desk like a trick he'd practiced. If your daughter-in-law defaults, we take the house. I looked at the signature. It was my name wearing somebody else's shoes, too jaunty on the M, the tail on the R like it thought it was a parade. The date sat in the corner like a witness. June 12th, 10:14 a.m. At that exact hour, I was asleep on a table with a surgeon fitting a new lens behind my left eye. I have the wristband. I have the aftercare sheet with my name spelled right and my pupils dilated like moons. Funny place to sign from, I said, and set the hospital bracelet beside the loan. Do you accept signatures from the operating room now? Is that a premium service? He didn't laugh. Bankers rarely do when the joke fits the room too well. He glanced at the notary stamp, a square blue halo that read Clive Pemble, commission number 74291, remote online notary. The acknowledgement box said I'd appeared via audio-visual communication, proved my identity through knowledge questions and a driver's license scan, and demonstrated willingness and capacity. Capacity. They always like that word when they want to shrink you. Beside me, my son Evan breathed like a man trying to inhale a lie and swallow it whole. His wife, Tanya, had the posture of a woman who believes decorum can beat evidence if she holds her chin at the right angle. It's standard, Tanya said. We had to move fast for the lease. The daycare space would have gone to someone else. Then perhaps you should have used someone else's mother, I said. The manager cleared his throat. Our records show Mrs. Carter passed identity checks. The system logs. Which system? I asked. And whose IP? I don't own a webcam. I don't answer questions about mortgages I paid off in 2017. And on June 12th at 10:14 a.m., I was arguing with a nurse about whether you will give me the name of the loan officer who okayed a lien on a recorded life estate. I will give you a letter from my surgeon with a photo of the bright, round nothing where my vision was at 10:14 a.m. Mrs. Carter, the manager began, soothing and slow. We can work out hardship arrangements. I am not a hardship, I said. I am a homeowner. I stood. People forget old women practice standing through wars you can't Google. Keep the copy, I added, tapping the forged M with one finger. I prefer originals. They remember better. Outside, the bank's floor-to-ceiling windows reflected a woman with a cane she didn't need today and a mouth that had given up apologizing for existing. Evan followed like a shadow that wanted to be a son again. Tanya clicked behind him like a metronome for bad decisions. Mom, Evan said softly. You needed to read, I said. You needed to marry a noun, not a loophole. Tanya's smile cracked. We can fix it with a refinance, she said. Roll it into a HELOC. The equity is just sitting there. The equity is living here, I said. It has a name. I walked to Gina's and ordered the kind of coffee that can forgive a morning. I pulled out my yellow pad and started a list, the way you do when you decide to outlast a process. Equintal Alvarez, civil lawyer with a spine. Demand audit trail, notary journal, credential file, KBA logs, webcam recording, chain of custody. Eurides Dr. Leem, surgical record, wristband photo, affidavit, patient unconscious 10:14 a.m. Intellectually, pull life estate recording, homestead trust pages, certified copies. Call state notary division, complaint against Clive Pemble, jurisdiction, venue, Ron compliance. Heroin APS, flag elder financial exploitation, ask for liaison. Misunderstand Kinley, note possible forgery, request incident number. Holodograph house, shame, ferments fast. I walked home, took the deed from its frame, and taped a certified copy on the hall wall at eye level, the way Lydia, our retired municipal clerk, taught me. I wrote in thick marker below it, Life Estate, May Carter. Do not encumber. Then I took a photo with the date showing on my kitchen clock. I am an old woman who has learned to make a house remember itself. At 6, a courier slid a notice of default through my slot. Like a threat that didn't know its audience, I set it on the hall table under the deed, then laid my hospital bracelet across it like a ribbon on a bad gift. Tomorrow, I would call Clive and ask him what my living room looked like at 10:14 a.m., while I was flashing a light at the ceiling of an operating room. I would ask him what color my pupils were on the webcam when the anesthesiologist was calling them by their first names. I would ask him which knowledge questions I passed, the ones about my first car, or the ones about the husband I buried 10 winters ago. And then I would teach the bank a verb it had forgotten: rescind. Morning arrived with the kind of light that makes paper look brave. I laid my hospital bracelet beside my coffee like a place card. Dr. Liam called before clinic hours, voice warm as gauze. Mrs. Carter, anesthesia record. Induction 9:02, maintenance until 11:41, emergence 11:48. You were deeply asleep at 10:14 a.m. Pupils pharmacologically dilated. He emailed the chart, the wristband photo, and a short affidavit that could stand up in a room with wood and flags. Alvarez does not get to it, he gets it. By 10, his courier had served the bank, the servicer, and Clive Pemble, RON number 74291, with a spoliation letter. Preserved the e-notary audit trail, identity verification recordings, KBA, knowledge-based authentication, questions and answer logs, device fingerprints, IP addresses, geolocation, credential analyses. Every breadcrumb liar. If you were under anesthesia, none of those verbs happened. She opened a formal investigation, asked for Alvarez's spoliation letter, and gave me a complaint number that felt like a spine. NC 74291-25. Officer Kinley knocked like a gentleman who believes in doors. He took the notice of default, photographed my hall wall, Life Estate, May Carter, do not encumber, and issued an incident number for suspected forgery of a deed of trust/elder financial exploitation. We'll brief the DA's fraud unit, he said. If the audit trail says what I think it will, we're moving this from polite to criminal. At noon, Evan stood in my doorway holding his own hands like they were evidence. She said it was legal, he blurted. Tanya, her friend at a concierge notarization service, Quick Seal, set it up. We were at Heron Collab on 7th. She used my laptop. They said they could accommodate busy signers. She had files, answers to those credit questions, old addresses I'd forgotten. She said you'd given her a copy of your license to book something last year. He swallowed. They held up a webcam, just a thumbnail, said your video wasn't toggling, but they'd proceed under exception. Clive's voice. He asked 2 questions and then said, "We're good." It took 5 minutes. Exceptions are where crimes hide their coats, I said softly. Thank you for saying nouns. At 1:17, Alvarez texted, Prelim audit. He'd scared loose a preview from the platform. Device fingerprint MacBook Pro 18.3, browser Chrome/122, IP 173.66.14.207, geolocated to Heron Collab. Session flag, secondary video feed missing. KBA passed on 3rd attempt. Credential scan, low confidence. Notary location, out of state. A beach town, Idaho. He said in OSC, ordered a show cause hearing in 10 days to decide whether to void the lien, sanction the bank, and refer Clive to the commission and the DA. His pen made the kind of sound you remember. On the steps, the bank's man attempted bomb. Mrs. Carter, if we discover irregularities, we'll... You've already discovered them, I said, and tapped a line about out of state. Let your verbs catch up. Back home, Bernice from the commission called. We pulled Clive's journal, she said, voice crisp. Entry for your notarization is thin. He notes, video intermittent. Signer confirmed by KBA. Agent present. Agent? She sniffed. Not a legal role. She'd suspended his commission pending investigation. If the recording shows no signer, she added, we will refer for false notarization and recording a false instrument. I taped the TRO beside the deed on my hall wall. Title, order. I like when nouns keep company. APS's elder liaison stopped by in a peacoat and good boots. We'll keep a file, she said. You already did our job. We'll add support if the DA opens a case. At dusk, Evan came back alone with a trembling envelope. Quick seal invoice, an email thread where Tanya wrote, Mom-in-law won't Zoom, use exception, and a text, Clive, we'll smooth the KBA. He set them on a table like a confession. I didn't read. I'm reading now. Good, I said. Bring your verbs to the next hearing. Night found me walking the house with the quiet satisfaction of a woman whose walls have learned to talk in public. The notice of default sat under my hospital bracelet like a before and after photo. The TRO hung beside the deed like a handrail. Tomorrow, the bank will dig in its logs, Alvarez will sharpen his questions, Bernice will press her suspension into an order, and Clive will discover what happens when a stamp meets a surgeon's clock. They slid a lien under anesthesia. A man in a button-down with a ceiling fan twirling lazily behind him and a surf poster you could hear. Miss Carter, can you hear me? He asked the empty pane, then turned his head. A woman's voice off camera, Tanya, stage whispered. She can't toggle. Proceed under exception. He glanced down, clicked, smiled. We'll proceed, he said, and asked 2 knowledge questions, both answered by a second voice, not mine, muffled, certain. Good enough, he said. We're good. Good is a verb that dies under oath. The KBA log showed 2 failed attempts at 10:11, then a pass at 10:14. Questions: first car, former street name, lender on a mortgage from 1992. Tanya had brought an answer key to my life. I didn't know she collected. Device fingerprint, MacBook Pro, 18.3. Browser, Chrome/122. IP geolocated, Tehran Collab on 7th, the co-working space Evan mumbled last night. Notary location, out of state. Approved exception, checkbox, ticked. Signer liveness, failed. ID scan confidence, low. And God bless overbuilt software. GPS of notary, 32.70 degrees north with a timestamp that places him 500 miles from my front porch while I slept under the care of anesthesia. Alvarez didn't raise his voice. Men like him keep their victories filed. We'll file a motion to cancel the deed of trust and quiet title, plus sanctions and fees, he said. We'll request referral to the DA for false notarization and forgery, and to the commission for permanent revocation. He clicked into the disbursement ledger the bank pretended not to have. There it was. $250,000 wired 10:42 a.m. to Little Sprouts Learning, LLC, Tanya's daycare, at a bank with a branch that knows her smile. We freeze that, he murmured. Ex parte asset restraint today. Bernice from the commission called as if cued. We have, he texted the line I watched judges like to underline. Title cannot be stolen while an elder sleeps. Evan showed up with a shoebox of humility. Quick seal invoice, emails with subject lines that flinched, KBA help, exception, and a bank statement from Tanya's LLC with the wire starred in bright yellow. He put it down like penance. I'll testify, he said. He looked at my hall wall. Life estate, May Carter. Do not encumber. And finally read it like a person who accepts the terms. At 3:58, we were in a courtroom where the heat works. and justice does too on good days. Alvarez handed up the audit trail and the disbursement page. The judge, a new one but with the same useful eyebrows, read fast. Slower at out-of-state notary, slower still at signer video loading. He signed the freeze. Funds restrained pending adjudication, he said. Show cause set with your quiet title motion. I want Clive on the record. I want the vendor on the record. And I want the bank to explain why exception is their favorite word when the statute doesn't know it. Outside, the bank's counsel tried a settlement feeler like a man checking a door he doesn't own. We'll rescind the lien and issue a curative reconveyance, he said quickly. In exchange, a mutual NDA, no publicity, no fault. No, I said. Rescind, reconvey, apologize, and cooperate with the DA. Your NDA is a lid on a pot we've taken off the stove. Alvarez added, gentle as a knife. We'll also need fees, and a donation to the clinic that teaches elders not to be notarized in their sleep. Back home, Lydia added new labels like a benediction. Freeze, order. Quiet title, motion. Sanctions, OST. She slid the beach poster still into exhibits. Humility. And the DA will calendar Clive for a conversation with someone who pronounces felony correctly. Alvarez will sharpen the motion into something a judge frames in his mind. Bernice will press revocation. Celeste will teach an algorithm to dislike the word exception. Evan will carry boxes. They tried to make my name sign while my eyes were asleep. We woke the room. The OSC day, order to show cause, donned the color of copier paper, which felt appropriate. Lydia stacked the binders by height like choir sections. Deed, TRO, freeze, audit, KBA, IPGO, disbursements, sanctions, OSC, and tucked 2 extra pens into my purse because she distrusts court-provided ink. Alvarez walked us through our verbs in the hallway. Evan first, he said. Facts, not feelings. Collab, MacBook. Tanya's exception. Then the surgeon's clock. Then the audit trail. Then we stop talking and let the paper do what it was built to do. Evan nodded, palms flat against his thighs, like a man relearning posture. Tanya arrived in a suit the color of loopholes, chin set to decorum wins. Clive showed up on a screen. Collared shirt, no surf poster this time, counsel at his elbow, commission already stamped suspended by Bernice's hand. The judge took the bench, eyebrows already interested. Alvarez rose, unrolled our morning into clean nouns, and handed up the recording still. Left pane, signer, video loading. Right pane, Clive saying, We'll proceed. 2 KBA failures, a third try passed, geolocation pin plunked on Heron Collab, while my pupil slept under surgical light. Counsel, the judge asked the bank. We relied on platform compliance. The bank's lawyer tried again, softer. Statute does not recognize reliance or exception as substitutes for presence. The judge said, and his pen clicked like a metronome finding tempo. He called Evan. My son told the room where the laptop sat, which answers Tanya read from. What concierge notarization promised, and where do you dispute any of that? Clive's counsel cleared his throat. My client believed the platform's approved exception was compliant. The statute is not a suggestion, the judge replied. He set his pen down and spoke in the even voice of a man installing a handrail. Order. The deed of trust is void. The lien is cancelled. The bank shall record a curative reconveyance within 48 hours and file proof. Funds wired to Little Sprouts Learning LLC shall remain frozen. A constructive trust is imposed over those funds pending further order. Sanctions. The bank will pay Ms. Carter's fees and costs. It will also fund a $25,000 donation to the Senior Legal Clinic for RON training and elder fraud prevention. Mr. Pemble is referred to the Attorney General and the District Attorney for false notarization and recording a false instrument. His suspension stands pending revocation. The platform QuickSeal is ordered to appear and show why its exception template should not be enjoined. It will produce its compliance policies and audit KBA vendor. Ms. Hart is referred to the DA's Elder Abuse Unit for charging consideration. Injunction: no party shall report derogatory credit or engage in collection related to this void instrument. Title is quieted in Ms. Carter's name per recorded life estate. He paused, glanced at me over his glasses. Ms. Carter, do you seek any additional relief? I stood, careful, steady. An apology, Your Honor, in writing, from the bank to me and to the clinic. And training. I want the people who click proceed to sit in a room where someone teaches them when not to. Granted, he said. Restorative order. Written apologies to Ms. Carter and the clinic. Attendance by bank staff and QuickSeal representatives at a RON compliance no exceptions seminar. To be certified by the commission. Clerk to calendar. Paper rustled, the good kind. Outside, the bank's lawyer suddenly flew. They like it. Bernice emailed the revocation order with a line that felt like a handshake. We prefer not to suspend twice. Celeste left a message. Platform killed exceptions. Agents must see two faces breathing. Pop-up now reads, if signer cannot appear, stop. We had cake. At 4, a courier from the bank delivered a stamped copy of the curative reconveyance and a letter on heavyweight stock that didn't try to look kind. It said, in words that finally did their jobs, we rescind. We are sorry. We will repair. Enclosed, a $25,000 check to the clinic. I taped the reconveyance next to the deed on my wall. Title, reconveyance. The notice of default went into exhibits, how it started, under my hospital bracelet, where before and after belongs. I set rescind, return, repair on top of orders and let my house learn a sequence. Evan came by with 2 boxes, socks for the pantry, and a look that didn't ask for absolution. I'll testify for the DA, he said. I'll carry for the clinic. And I told my landlord, no exceptions, ever. Good, I said. That's a verb you can keep. Night fell obediently. The lemon tree tapped once, twice. The keys on their hook made the small, satisfied sound metal makes when it remembers who it belongs to. I stood in the hall where paper had become a choir and read it like a psalm. Deed, true, freeze, reconveyance. They tried to make my name sign while my eyes slept. We woke the room, and then we taught it to speak. The apology came on paper thick enough to pretend it had always been decent. We rescind. We are sorry. We will repair. The bank signed with a pen that finally learned verbs. Enclosed, proof of curative reconveyance, recorded at 3:42 p.m., and a $25,000 check to the clinic, heavy as a lesson. Lydia slid both into sleeves, reconveyance, recorded, apology. He added a line I copied in my yellow pad for clinic walls. Platforms cannot innovate around statutes. Bernice, from the commission, made her revocation final before lunch. Clive's seal died on paper as neatly as it should have. She sent a note I liked so much I taped it inside my cupboard. We prefer not to suspend twice. By afternoon, DA press released what Kinley had warned. Charges, false notarization, recording a false instrument, identity theft, conspiracy. Clive surrendered, pale and suddenly allergic to cameras. Tanya walked in with counsel, the same chin, less certainty. Arraignment set, bail posted with conditions that made sense. No Ron, no access to May's data, no contact with me except through counsel. Evan sat at my table, hands open, voice even. I'll testify, he said. He didn't reach for the word regret, and he didn't ask for the word forgiveness. He poured coffee and labeled envelopes for the pantry. Growth doesn't always need spotlight. Sometimes it needs a pen and a list. The first Ron Compliance, No Exceptions seminar took over the fellowship hall, the same room where we fold socks and air out mistakes. Quickseal sent 5 staff with listening faces. The bank sent a row of loan officers whose shoes squeaked like conscience. Bernice opened with statute, plain words, no adjectives. Alvarez walked them through the audit trail, IPs, device fingerprints, KBA, liveness. Kinley explained how bad paper becomes criminal when you add a stamp to Audacity. We taped the still. Signer video loading, above the coffee urn. Then it was my turn. 2 minutes. I don't like microphones. I like verbs. At 10:14 a.m., I said, I was under anesthesia. You heard that twice from paper, once from a surgeon. A stamp turned my sleep into a lien. You call that a constructive trust over any business purchases with the frozen funds. Community service at the clinic and warming center. Public apology to be read where it belonged, in a room with elders. The judge would decide prison. Alvarez would argue that work teaches better when paper watches. We gathered in the clinic for the restorative reading. The same bell Kinley polished for the pantry hung at the door, clapper wrapped so it only rings on purpose. Ruth tapped it once. Tanya stood with our draft, hands trembling just enough to be human. We used your name while you slept, she read. We built logistics around your house and called it love. We were wrong. We will repair in public. Funds returned. Training attended. Hours served. Words read where harm lived. We are sorry. No applause. A nurse adjusted a cardigan on a man waiting for his meds. An alto from our choir underlined a date on a sign-up sheet. Evan stepped up, voice steady. I didn't read, he said. I read now. If someone offers you an exception when the statute says presence, call me. I'll say no out loud. A useful noun in a decent sentence. Later, Alvarez brought the quiet title order, signed, definitive. May Carter where it belongs. A line drawn through the lie. He set down another paper. Training certificate. Quickseal and the bank had attended. Bernice countersigned. Compliant. Lydia smiled with the kind of satisfaction you only get by alphabetizing a storm. The asset freeze moved to constructive trust. The $250,000 would return, less costs the court approved. No operational expenses that smell like Audacity. A slice diverted by order, Alvarez asked. The judge nodded. To fund clinic tech. Scanners that make deeds fast. Printers that make orders legible. And a small grant for paper Isadore workshops with coffee and sleeves. If we saved one old... He stood in a suit that didn't belong to a man whose stamp had built a lie. Commission already revoked by Bernice's neat hand. The prosecutor read the verbs. False notarization, recording a false instrument. Alvarez didn't posture. He let the audit trail do its work. The split screen with signer video loading, the out-of-state GPS, the liveness fail, the checkbox that tried to rename absence as exception. The judge, who has the gift of making silence feel like gravity, spoke. The statute asked for presence. You supplied pretense. He imposed 2 years probation, restitution for fees, permanent bar from notarization, 200 hours teaching at the Ron Compliance No Exceptions seminar under supervision, not as a guru, as a warning, and a public apology to be read once each quarter at the clinic. If Clive missed a comma, the judge promised to know. Tanya came next. The DA read attempted theft by false instrument and identity theft. Evan sat behind me, breathing like a man who had learned to make breath behave. Alvarez asked the court to aim consequence at repair. The judge agreed with teeth. Constructive trust remains. Restitution to the lender from her, not me. 300 hours community service at the clinic and warming center. Mandatory training. Ron, Elder Fraud 101. No contact with my data. Apology to be read where harm lived. Prison teaches some lessons, he said. Work teaches more when paper watches. He turned toward me. Mrs. Carter, the court notes your wall. He meant the copies I taped. Deed. Reconveyance. Quiet title. Consider filing a copy of that wall in our juror orientation. People should see what verbs look like when they do their jobs. Lydia squeezed my hand until my bones felt young. Back in the fellowship hall, Quickseal sent engineers with notebooks and faces that understood what no means, a label maker that Lydia already taught to spell quiet title without flinching. We set up a paper is a door table with sleeves and coffee and a sign, name your binders before anyone names your house. Councilwoman Ortiz pushed a state model bill. Ron, with one attempt KBA. Liveness that reads a blink and a turn, no agents ever, in-state notary, elder context flag that calls a supervisor. She sent me a draft. I underlined presence 3 times because some words deserve underlines. Celeste called with frosting in her voice. We shipped the hard stop, she said. If liveness fails or video is missing, agent see stop in red, no overrides. Elder context triggers a human. Ron sessions logged to a cold weather style cue with eyes on it. Training finished. Cake consumed. I mailed her lemon bars with a note. Presence is a face. Keep making computers prefer it. At the clinic, Tanya put on a smock with our name on it and mopped without captions. The apology reading, quarterly, landed like it should. Words plain, verbs working. We used your name while you slept. She read again, softer now. We were wrong. We will repair in public. No applause. Everyone kept doing their jobs because that's what repair looks like. Evan came early on pantry day and stayed until the beans learned his back. He spoke at a Know Your Paper night, not as a penitent, as a witness. If someone offers you an exception, call it what it is. Risk. He held up the wall we'd printed miniature, deed, reconveyance, quiet title. People took one home, taped it by their fuses like a polite alarm. Bernice delivered a small stack of revocation notices for the clinic's bulletin board, names blacked out, lessons in bold. We prefer not to suspend twice, the stamp said. We added beneath, and we prefer to never suspend you at all. Learn first. I added a page to Paper is a Door. Resence is not a setting, it's a person. Celeste will send a screenshot of a red stop that saved someone I'll never meet. Lydia will refill the sleeves. Alvarez will send a young associate with a binder and the instruction verbs only. And I will pour tea, set 2 cups, habit, and keep a chair for any stranger who needs to memorize the sound of no. The aftermath didn't arrive with trumpets. It showed up in envelopes, webinars, and a new kind of muscle memory. Ms. Patel pinned a flyer to the clinic corkboard. Elder Paper Helpline. 1 number, 3 verbs. Stop, save, send. Under it, we listed what to do when a screen tries to hurry you. Stop the session. Save the screen. Send it to someone who can say no in writing. Lydia laminated 20. The machine purred like a cat that prefers statutes. Bernice forwarded the AG settlement with Quickseal. No confetti, just teeth. Hard stop when liveness fails. Single KBA attempt. Ban on agents. Jurisdiction check. Audit rights. and a $2 million restitution fund for elders notarized by exceptions. A page down, a line I underlined 3 times. Presence means present. She added a postscript in her reliable hand. Your wall is now a slide. We prefer not to suspend twice. Celeste called with cake in her voice. We pushed the elder flag statewide, she said. If age in the profile over 65 or an elder context keyword appears, life estate, power of attorney, reverse mortgage, our system routes to a human with a do not proceed first line script. Agents have to hear themselves say stop before they can click anything else. She sent a screenshot, a red box that wasn't polite. If signer cannot appear, stop. I taped it to the fridge beside deed. Reconveyance. Quiet title. My house likes to study. On Thursday, a woman named Odell came to the clinic with a folder and a face that apologized. I will spend my hours teaching the word wait. No applause. 2 notaries in the back underlined wait twice. That's applause enough. Tanya kept mopping. She stopped asking if the floor was watching her and started watching the floor. The day the constructive trust disgorged the last dollar, she brought in a receipt and set it on Ms. Patel's desk without a speech. At intake, she's the one who reads our line to newcomers. We used your name while you slept. We were wrong. We will repair in public. Some people get to choose their restitution. She got assigned hers and then kept choosing it. Evan speaks now at the Know Your Paper night like a man explaining how he fixed a fence he broke. If a platform says reduce friction, ask who gets sanded down. He tells the room. If a friend offers you answers to your mother's life, ask where they found them and why they thought they had the right. He carries boxes, labels shelves, learns the difference between a noun that struts and a verb that works. Councilwoman Ortiz invited me to the State House as a prop and a person. We sat through Ron 2.0 hearings where lobbyists tried to decorate the word presence with adverbs. The chair held up a copy of my wall we'd printed miniature. This, she said, tapping, owner may enter and exit at will and no exceptions, is what the statute looks like in a kitchen. The bill moved out of committee with the spine, no agents, 1 KBA, hard stop, elder flag, in-state only, audit logs retained. The clerk slipped me a copy with a smile that said she knows where the lemon bars live. We ran our first paper is a door workshop with the new tech the court's donation bought, scanners that make deeds crisp, a label maker that spells quiet title without needing supervision, a laminator that turns helpline cards into little shields. We taught grandmothers to title their binders like they titled their lives. We taught grandsons to read the difference between a button and the statute. At home, I added one more piece to the when a signer says no, write it down. Stop. Amena, the screen says loading. Your pen says wait. When you don't know, ask a woman whose kitchen has a wall. I slid a copy into orders because young lawyers need a place to begin. We didn't get our house back with sirens. We annotated it with proof. We taught a notary to read, a platform to stop, a bank to apologize, a son to label, a daughter-in-law to mop, and a city to put verbs in the right places. They tried to make my name sign while my eyes slept. Now my wall signs back in daylight. The week found its rhythm in paper and coffee. Ms. Patel taped up the first elder paper helpline call log. 15 calls, 12 saved screenshots, 8 sessions stopped mid-click because someone remembered the 3 words, stop, save, send. Lydia laminated the tally like she was preserving a season. Bernice sent a packet with a cover letter that read like a door. State Commission, mandatory posters, big font, no wiggle. Presence means present. No agents. Why video, both sides. State only. She'd slipped in a smaller card for kitchen walls. If your screen says loading, your pen says wait. I framed it and hung it under reconveyance. Quick Seal released their restitution fund terms. $2 million for elders notarized by exceptions. Alvarez circled the line. Eligible if audit shows liveness fail, plus KBA retry, plus agent present. Odell qualified. The email came with a subject that had finally learned humility. We are sorry. Claim here. She cried at Ms. Patel's desk, then laughed at herself for crying. We added restitution Odell to a sleeve because repair has receipts. The Ron 2.0 bill cleared the State House without losing its vertebrae. Councilwoman Ortiz texted a photo of the vote. When an elder says no, write it down and stop. A teller wiped her eyes. A loan officer underlined stop twice. That's enough. Celeste sent me a screenshot that made me wish frosting was a fruit group. A red stop box with a caption beneath, May's rule applied. Signer flagged as elder. Liveness failed. Session terminated. She wrote, the agent thanked the script for telling her exactly what to say. Scripts are just trained courage. I printed it and slid it into repair proof. At the fellowship hall, we held our first notary clinic. 20 chairs, 20 stamps, 1 statute. Bernice showed them how to log a journal without inventing characters. Kinley explained why agent present is a story that ends in an orange jumpsuit. Alvarez described audit trails like weather. They don't care how you feel. We tacked up the split screen again, signer video loading, and passed around a mirror. Presence, Bernice said, tapping the glass, means this. Afterward, a young notary, 25, careful, waited at my elbow. My aunt is the kind who thinks workarounds are clever, she said. How do I hold the line? Put the poster in your bag, I said, and handed her 2, one for her wall, one for her aunt's fridge. When your gut says no, let your mouth borrow from the statute. Presence means present. At home, I added a new shelf to the hall bookcase, teaching, and slid in the ag training outline, bank attendance sheet, Quick Seal audit certificate, and a copy of Ron 2.0 folded to the part that keeps computers honest. My house is learning to be a library with a single subject, how to stay yours. Tanya came by after a warming center shift, hair tucked out of her eyes, a list in her hand. Hours completed, hours remaining. A new chore rota for the clinic. She didn't ask for anything. She set the list on Ms. Patel's desk. Do not ship a button the statute wouldn't build. They nodded. I hope their bosses listened. Evening settled into the edges. I stood in the hall and read my wall like a bedtime story to a room that earns sleep. Deed. Reconveyance. Quiet title. Law. Ron 2.0. Apology. Bank. Beneath the little kitchen card. If your screen says loadings, loading. Your pen says wait. The notice of default remained under my hospital bracelet in how it started. A relic of hubris, politely retired. The lemon tree tapped once, twice, roll call, and then went still, satisfied with attendance. My keys answered with their small metal hymn. Out on the bench, a new brass plate Lydia had bullied an engraver into making caught the porch light and said what we've been practicing. Paper is a door. Open it slowly. They tried to sign my name while my eyes slept. Now the room wakes before any pen does. The Attorney General's training video dropped on a Tuesday with a title that didn't waste its nouns. 5 minutes that cost $250,000. It opened not with a gavel, but with a split screen, Signer video loading on the left. Clive on the right saying, "Will proceed." Then it cut to my kitchen wall. Deed. Reconveyance. Quiet title. Law. Ron 2.0. Someone in production understood that laws are best filmed where groceries live. Ms. Patel propped her laptop on the clinic counter so walk-ins could watch while they waited for forms to stop misbehaving. Lydia took a pen to the tally sheet on the corkboard. Helpline calls, 23 this week. Sessions stopped mid-click, 15. Saved screenshots, 18. She underlined stop, save, send once, then again because repetition is a teacher. Bernice sent an email with an attachment the size of a guardrail. Commission advisory, elder-free, and Lydia nodded as if he quoted scripture. Evan took his turn under the AG's lights for the training piece. He stood in my kitchen, fuse box open, miniature wall taped inside, and said the sentence he's practiced until it fits. "I didn't read. I read now. If someone offers you an exception, you are hearing risk." They filmed his hands, labeling a shelf at the pantry because growth should have props. Tanya reached her hours and didn't stop. She scheduled herself for Wednesday afternoons without the cushion of compulsion. At intake, she kept using the sentence that belongs to the room. "We used your name while you slept. We were wrong. We will repair in public." She showed up to mop after the seminar without asking whether anyone was watching. People who once loved an audience can learn to love a broom. Clive taught his first solo segment at the seminar under Bernice's eye. He didn't spin. He pointed to the split screen. "If signer video loading appears," he said, "leave." Someone asked about KBA. "One attempt," he answered, as if reciting confession. "If you see a second, you're already in trouble." He read his quarterly apology without decoration. We filed it under repair, proof, because sincerity deserves a folder too. The bank sent 2 auditors to shadow our clinic day. They took notes beside the coffee urn, under the poster that scolds, "If the law says appear, do not invent a button." At closing, the manager pressed a letter into Ms. Patel's hand. Internal audit complete, exceptions removed from workflows, elder flag added to loan origination, mandatory seminar attendance certified. He'd signed it with the same pen that had written the apology. I like a pen that learns. Councilwoman Ortiz pushed a companion ordinance at the county. Recorder alerts, text to owners and designated neighbors, kindly if you're wise, when any instrument touches your parcel. I put Daniel and Lydia on mine. Their phones chirped while the clerk tested the system with a harmless mock filing. Test. No action. We lacked the kitchen card. If your screen says loading, your pen says wait. The notice of default stayed under my hospital bracelet in how it started, a fossil with the courtesy to keep still. One more envelope slid under the door, this one from the AG. Public Service Award for the clinic, for establishing paper is a door and teaching a state to say stop. Ruth taped it above the laminator. We ate lemon bars without a speech. On the bench, the brass plate Lydia bullied into grace caught the porch light. Paper is a door. Open it slowly. Daniel sat beside me, hands that used to hold excuses now holding nothing on purpose. "You're speaking at the juror orientation," he said. 2 minutes? "I'll say verbs," I said. "They travel well." The lemon tree tapped the window. Once. Twice. Roll call. Present. My keys answered with their patient metal hymn. We were almost to the end of this script, which only meant we were at the middle of the work. They tried to sign my name while my eyes slept. Now the county texts me before a pen can pretend. Juror orientation smelled like fresh toner and nervous good intentions. They'd asked me for 2 minutes because Lydia sent a photo of my kitchen wall. Deed. Reconveyance. Quiet title. Law, Ron 2.0, Apology, Bank. They wanted to show strangers that justice fits where groceries live. I don't like microphones. I like verbs. I was under anesthesia at 10:14 a.m., I said. A stamp tried to sign my name anyway. Some people called that an exception. The statute calls it absence. We answered with presence, in paper, in court, in rooms where people pour coffee and say no out loud. They didn't clap. They wrote. That's the sound I trust. Back home, the week folded into its right routines. She no longer checks if anyone is filming. She asks if anyone is warm. Evan learned his new apartment's sounds, the radiator's gentle knock, his own feet at the right speed, the way a fuse quietly agrees with you when you've labeled it. He taped a miniature of my wall inside his front closet and added one line in his printing, careful and square. If someone says exception, hear risk. He brings soup on Thursdays. He carries boxes without speeches. He reads everything. Clive did his hours at the seminar. He pointed to the split screen, signer video loading, and said, "If you see this, stop." He read his apology like a man who respects commas because a judge told him to, and because he's beginning to understand why. Ms. Patel ran another Paper is a Door workshop. We taught grandmothers to scan their deeds and stick their pins in envelopes with names their kitchens trust. We taught grandsons how to hold a phone steady when a doorbell needs to remember. Ruth blessed the laminator with a hand on its warm back. Kwan showed a landlord where the egress goes, even though that was last story's verb. Policy like sequels when they're useful. The clinic wall grew one more frame. AG Public Service Award for teaching a state to say stop, save, send. We didn't throw a party. We put out lemon bars and sleeves. People came because paper tastes better when someone boils water and tells you your nouns are enough. The constructive trust disgorged the last dime. The ledger closed. The DA filed his final memos. Revocation permanent. Compliance checks calendared. Training certified. He added a sentence that made me smile. Exceptions are closed for the season. Seasons learn when you teach them where the door is. On a slow afternoon, Councilwoman Ortiz stopped by with a brass plate the size of... We taught a bank to apologize, a platform to stop, a stamp to wait, a son to read, a daughter-in-law to mop, a county to text, and a state to underline presence. Not loudly, not cruelly, just finally.